On Wednesday morning, I was watering the flowers on the veranda when I heard the familiar thump of heels on the concrete path. Estrella was walking toward my house, waving her arms and muttering something to herself. I could tell from her gait that something out of the ordinary had happened. I had gotten used to such visits over the past year. My daughter appeared at my house every time there was another shock in her life, and the shocks happened with enviable regularity. "Mom, are you home?" she shouted from the doorstep, not waiting for an answer and swinging open the mosquito net. "Where else would I be at 8 o'clock in the morning?" I said, putting the watering can on the windowsill. "Do you want coffee?" Estrella plopped down on the living room couch, kicked off her shoes, and threw her feet up on the coffee table. 32 years old and acting like a teenager. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared. It was obvious she'd slept poorly, or not at all. She was wearing a bright pink dress that she'd worn for the third day in a row. I knew that because Amelia said she'd seen her in it on Monday and Tuesday. "I quit," she said without preamble. I slowly put the pot on the stove and turned to my daughter. Fourth job in 2 years. At the bank, she'd lasted longer than usual, almost 8 months. Before that, she was a receptionist at a dental clinic, then a clerk at a clothing store, and even before that, a secretary at a law office. It's the same story everywhere. At first, everything is fine, then conflicts with coworkers or superiors begin. What happened this time? "That asshole Carlos thinks he can tell me how to do my job," Estrella said quickly, waving her hands. "Imagine. He demands that I show up at 9 o'clock, not 9:15. As if those 15 minutes make any difference. And then he's nagging me about my paperwork. He says customers complain about my service." I'd known Carlos Mendoza since high school. He was a classmate of my late husband. A pedantic man, but fair. If he made remarks, there were good reasons. Carlos was always punctual and demanding, but he was never unreasonable. What exactly did the client say? "It was nothing," Estrella said with a wave of her hand. "One old woman complained that I allegedly spoke rudely to her, and I simply explained to her that she had filled out the form incorrectly. It's not my fault people are so stupid," I sighed. My daughter had never been known for her patience, especially with older people. As a child, she could sass even me if something wasn't her way. "So you just walked out?" "Yes, I told him what I thought and slammed the door." Estrella proudly stuck up her chin. "I won't work for someone who doesn't appreciate me. I told him he was a fool if he couldn't see what a good employee I was." The coffee began to boil and I took the pot off the fire. Outside the window, my neighbor Amelia was hanging laundry on a rope, occasionally glancing in our direction. She must have heard Estrella's voice. The daughter always spoke loudly, especially when she was excited. Amelia was retired, like me, and spent most of her time at home observing the lives of her neighbors. Not out of curiosity, but simply because there wasn't much else to do. "What are you going to do now?" I asked, pouring coffee into cups. "I'll find something better, maybe in another city." Estrella shrugged and took the cup. "There aren't any normal places here anyway. Just small offices that pay pennies." I sat down across from my daughter, trying to see if she was serious about moving. Such statements had been made regularly over the past few years, but they never went beyond words. Estrella liked to threaten change, but in fact she preferred to stay in her familiar surroundings. "Actually, I wanted you to meet Benicio. He'll be here soon," she added, finishing her coffee. Benicio, fourth guy this year. Before him there was Ricardo, a car mechanic who turned out to be married and hid it for 3 months. Fabio, a musician who played in a bar on weekends and thought he was a future star. And Diego, who called himself an entrepreneur, even though no one really understood what he did. They all lasted between 2 and 4 months. "Where did you meet him?" "At a bar near the bank. He's so interesting, Mom. He's an artist. He paints pictures and understands life in a different way than the rest of us. He and I have so much in common." An artist. There were no more than 3 artists in our town, and I knew them all by sight. An old man named Pedro, who painted portraits of tourists in the plaza, a young girl named Lourdes who taught at an art school, and another middle-aged man whose name I couldn't remember. Either Benicio is a visitor or just another slacker who calls himself a creative person to justify not wanting to work. "How old is he?" 28. He is very talented, just has not yet found the right place to create. He says there's too much competition in big cities, and in small towns, people don't understand art. I chuckled to myself. The classic excuse of losers. Everywhere circumstances are to blame, but not themselves. Does he work anywhere? Well, he works part-time, but he doesn't want to spend all his energy on some meaningless job. Creativity requires total commitment. That's another red flag for me. I've worked hard all my life, first at the store, then when my husband died, I worked part-time as an office cleaner to raise my kids. Now I'm listening to some guy who thinks work is pointless. About 10 minutes later, there was a knock at the door, 3 short knocks, then 2 more. Apparently, she and Estrella already had their own secret code. Her daughter jumped up from the couch and ran to open the door. Mom, it's Benicio! A tall, skinny guy of about 28, with carelessly styled hair and stubble a few days old, walked in. He was dressed in a crumpled shirt and jeans with holes in the knees. A worn bag dangled over his shoulder with a notebook sticking out of it. On his wrist were some homemade bracelets made of leather and beads. Hello, Senora Neves. He held out his hand to me and smiled, showing jagged teeth. Estrella has told me so much about you. The handshake was sluggish, the palms soft, not like the hands of a man who was used to physical labor. I offered him coffee, and he accepted, sitting down next to Estrella on the couch. They immediately started hugging and whispering like teenagers. Benicio paints amazing pictures, my daughter chirped, snuggling up to him. Show Mom that sketch you did yesterday. The boy reluctantly pulled a notebook out of his bag and showed me the pencil drawing. It was nothing special, a few sprawling lines that looked remotely like a face. I'd seen much better work from kids in art school. Interesting, I said politely. Where do you exhibit your work? Nowhere yet. Benicio scratched the back of his head. Looking for a suitable gallery. The locals don't understand modern art. They all want banal landscapes and portraits. What do you consider modern art? Well, it's hard to explain, he hesitated. It's more about conveying emotion than accurate depiction. Art should make you think, not just decorate your walls. Beautiful words, but there was nothing behind them. I noticed that Benicio spoke in general phrases that could be applied to any kind of art. What do you live on? Mom! Estrella was indignant. What uncomfortable questions you ask. It's nothing. Benicio waved his hand. I work sometimes. That in a cafe or handyman. But it's temporary, until I find my way in art. Temporary. I've known people like that at 28, still searching for themselves, scraping by on odd jobs, and women like my daughter support them, hoping that one day they'll be good enough. Do you have a family? Parents? My parents live out of state. We're not very close, Benicio looked away. They don't understand my choice. They want me to become a teacher or a civil servant, but I can't betray my dream. Estrella looked at him admiringly, as if he had just made a speech about the importance of freedom. I was even more alarmed by his words. A guy who, at almost 30, can't find a common language with his parents and lives only in his dreams is unlikely to be a reliable support for my daughter. What are your plans for the future? I want to organize a solo exhibition. Already looking for a room, Benicio revitalized. I just need to find sponsors or save for rent. How much would that cost? Not that much. 5 or 6,000 for a month's rent plus decorating costs. I almost choked on my coffee. 5,000 was half my monthly pension. For him, it was a small sum, but for me, it was serious money. Estrella and Benicio sat at my place for about an hour and a half, talking about plans to go to the ocean for the weekend, about art, and how unfair the world was. I listened half listening, watching their behavior. Benicio kept a relaxed demeanor, like a man who was used to having all his problems solved for him. Estrella looked at him with loving eyes and agreed with every word he said. When the conversation died down, I decided to tell my daughter what had been bothering me the last few days. Estrella, there's something I want to tell you. I saw Dr. Santana last week. Is it serious? Her daughter took a break from looking at the pictures on Benicio's phone. They found blood pressure and heart problems. His blood pressure's spiking. His heart's irregular. The doctor says it can be dangerous if left untreated. I paused, watching my daughter's reaction. You have to take a course of special medication, quite expensive. So what? Estrella shrugged her shoulders. You have money from the apartments. I do, but I've been saving it for emergencies. And this was just such an emergency. The drugs cost almost as much as my monthly pension each month, and the course of treatment is 6 months. Benicio fidgeted awkwardly on the sofa, clearly feeling superfluous in the family conversation. Estrella seemed completely indifferent to my health problems. She kept scrolling through her phone, only occasionally looking up. Mom, you've always been as healthy as a horse. The doctor is probably just trying to make money off you. She got up from the couch and stretched. Why don't you go to another doctor? Get a second opinion. Dr. Santana has been treating our family for 15 years. He delivered the babies when you and Augusto were born. He's not the type to overprescribe. Well, then buy your medicine and get treated. Estrella picked up her purse from the table. We have to go. Benicio has a meeting with someone about a job. What job? I asked. An acquaintance offers part-time work in an advertising agency. To draw illustrations for booklets, Benicio answered, standing up. It doesn't pay much, but it's something. They left as suddenly as they had come. I sat in the kitchen with my coffee, thinking about how my daughter had changed in recent years. She used to at least pretend to be concerned about my well-being, asking about symptoms, offering to help. Now she didn't even ask what was wrong with me. I went to the window and watched them walk down the path. Estrella was talking excitedly, waving her arms. Benicio listened, nodding occasionally. They turned the corner and disappeared from sight. I spent the rest of the day doing chores around the house. I cleaned up, cooked dinner, watered the flowers in the garden, but my thoughts kept returning to the conversation of the morning. Estrella's indifference was especially disturbing. Did she really think that my health was only my problem? Around 4 in the afternoon, I met Amelia at the store. She was buying milk and bread. I was buying vegetables for dinner. Saw your guest this morning, she said as we stood in line. Did you meet your daughter's new boyfriend? I did. He's an artist. I didn't hide the irony in my voice. He doesn't look like much of an artist, more like a slacker. That's what it looked like to me, and Estrella quit her job again. Again? Amelia shook her head. What was it this time? I told her about the conflict with Carlos, about Benicio's plans for the exhibition, and about my daughter's reaction to my health problems. Dolores, are you seriously ill? My friend was worried. The doctor says that if you treat it, everything will be fine, but the medicines are expensive and the course is long. Do you have money? I have some savings, but I don't want to spend it. I don't know what else will happen. We talked for a few more minutes, then we went home. Amelia promised to come back in the evening for tea and to discuss everything in detail. By evening, I couldn't sit at home alone with my thoughts. I made stronger tea, took some cookies, and went to Amelia's house. She lived across the street, and we'd been friends for over 20 years since I'd moved to the neighborhood after my husband died. Amelia met me on the doorstep in a housecoat and slippers. She was 2 years younger than me, but she looked older gray hair, wrinkles around her eyes, slouching shoulders. She had spent her whole life as a primary school teacher and had raised 3 children. Now they all lived in other cities, and Amelia was alone. Come in, she said, letting me into the house. I was just coming to see you. We sat down at the kitchen table. Amelia's house always smelled of cinnamon and vanilla. She loved to bake and often treated her neighbors to her creations. A plate of homemade muffins was already on the table. Tell me more about this Benicio, Amelia asked, pouring tea. What kind of man? An artist, as he called himself. 28 years old, does not want to work, lives with dreams of great art. He speaks beautifully, but has nothing to say. Is Estrella in love with him? Looks like it. She looks at him like a god. She agrees with everything he says. Dolores, no offense, but your daughter has always been too trusting of men. Amelia shook her head. I remember when she was still at school, she fell in love with every handsome boy and was ready to do anything for him. That was true. Estrella always chose boys with her heart, not her mind, or rather with her eyes. She liked handsome, charming, able to speak compliments, and the fact that behind the beautiful words is nothing, she realized only when it was too late. What did the doctor say about your health? Amelia asked. I told her more about the diagnosis. Dr. Santana explained that I have hypertension, which can lead to a stroke or heart attack if left untreated, plus heart rhythm disorders, which also require constant monitoring. Are medications really expensive? Very. The doctor said that the course of treatment will cost an amount equal to my pension for 2.5 months, and then you have to take maintenance therapy, which is more money. Do you have that kind of money? I have some savings in a safe at home. I've been saving up a little bit from the rent, just for emergencies, but I'm still too sorry to spend it. I don't know what else will happen. Amelia stirred her tea thoughtfully with a spoon. Maybe it's good that Estrella is out of work now. She'll live more modestly for a while. She'll understand the value of money. I doubt it. She'll always find someone to support her. That Benicio guy probably expects her to feed him. And with what? She doesn't have a job now. How's your son? I haven't seen Augusto for a long time. Augusto works at an electronics store. He's got a family. At least he understands what responsibility means, I sighed. He has a nice wife, Patricia. Quiet, domestic. Not like Estrella. Sometimes I wonder where I went wrong with my daughter. Or maybe it's just her personality. Don't blame yourself. Children choose how they want to live. Amelia patted my arm. And you should get treatment. Health is the most important thing. You can still earn money, but you can't buy health. It's easy to say to earn. At our age, who will hire us? Well, you've got apartments. They bring in income. It's not that bad. We sat in the kitchen for another hour and a half, discussing neighborhood news and reminiscing about our youth. Amelia told me about her daughter, who had recently given birth to her third child, and her son, who had gotten a promotion at work. I listened and thought about how differently the fates of children turn out. When I got home, it was already dark. The house was silent, only the old clock in the living room ticking. I turned on the TV, but it wasn't interesting to watch. It was playing some Brazilian series that I had already seen. Before I went to bed, I went into my bedroom and opened the small safe hidden behind the painting on the wall. It contained all my savings, money I'd been saving for years for a rainy day. It would be enough to pay for my treatment and still have some left over. I never told anyone about the existence of this safe, not even my children. I kept here the most important things: documents for the apartments, some of my late husband's gold jewelry and cash, my safety cushion in case of serious problems. After closing the safe, I went to bed and couldn't sleep for a long time, thinking about my daughter and her new boyfriend. Something told me that Benicio would cause more trouble than all of Estrella's previous suitors combined. And my daughter's indifference to my health was more upsetting than the doctor's diagnosis. The day after talking to Amelia, I decided to visit Augusto. My son lived in another part of town, about a half-hour bus ride away. I rarely went to see him unannounced, but this time I wanted to talk to someone in the family about what was going on with Estrella. The bus was almost empty. It was a weekday. Everyone was at work. I sat at the window and looked out at the familiar streets. Our town was small, and every house, every tree had its own story. Here was the store where I bought school supplies for my children. Here was the park where they played as children. Time passed quickly, and it seemed like yesterday. Augusto and Patricia rented a one-bedroom apartment on the first floor of an old house. Their son's salary at the electronics store was small, and they didn't have enough for their own place, but they didn't complain. They lived modestly but amicably. I rang the doorbell around 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Patricia opened the door, a thin woman of about 27, her hair neatly bunched. She was wearing a housecoat and apron, so she was cooking dinner. Dolores! She was surprised. How good of you to come. Come in, please. Patricia always addressed me by you, though I had asked her more than once to call me by my first name. She was a well-mannered girl from a good family, but a little shy. Is Augusto home? Yes, it's his day off today. He's in the shower, he'll be right out. The apartment was clean and cozy despite the simple furnishings. Patricia knew how to make home comforts out of simple things. There were pots of flowers on the windowsills, family photos on the walls, embroidered cushions on the sofa. Sit down, please, I'll put the tea on, Patricia fussed. Don't worry, dear, I just wanted to talk to Augusto. The sound of water came from the bathroom. 5 minutes later, my son appeared. A tall, sturdy man with a short haircut and attentive eyes. He looked like his father, especially when he frowned. Mom, he said, hugging me. What brings you here? I wanted to talk. About your sister. Augusto's face darkened at once. He and Estrella had never been close, especially in recent years. His son disapproved of her lifestyle and she thought he was a bore. What had she done this time? We sat down at the table and Patricia served tea and homemade meat pies. I told her about Estrella's visit last night, about being fired, about the new boyfriend and his plans for the 5 grand exhibition. Unemployed again, Augusto shook his head. And again with some guy. This one was even worse than the previous ones. At least Ricardo worked as a mechanic, and Fabio at least played in a bar. This one does nothing but dream. What did she say when you told her about your health? I recounted my daughter's reaction to the news that she needed treatment. Augusto listened silently, but I could see on his face that he was angry. Mom, of course I'll talk to her, but it won't do any good, he said finally. How many times I've tried to explain to her that she can't live like this. She won't listen to me. Maybe this time she will. You're her brother. To her, I'm a bore who doesn't understand freedom and creativity. Remember what she said last time? That I've turned into a bourgeois and live a boring life. Patricia was silent, only nodding occasionally. She knew about the relationship between brother and sister and tried not to interfere in family affairs. Are the medicines expensive? Augusto asked. Very. For 2.5 months of pension, a course of treatment. Mom, if you need money, I can give you what I can. We've got a little saved up, but thank you, son. But I have savings. It wasn't the money. It was the fact that Estrella didn't even ask what was wrong with me. We had lunch and continued talking. Augusto talked about work, about the fact that the store has new models of phones and computers, but people still buy little. The crisis. Patricia complained about the upstairs neighbors who played loud music at night. What about your children? I asked. I wanted to change the subject to something more pleasant. It's not working out yet, Patricia sighed. We've been trying for 2 years now. There is still time, don't worry. The main thing is to take care of your health and not to fray your nerves. After lunch, we sat in the kitchen for another hour, drinking tea and talking about everything little by little. Augusto promised to visit Estrella at the weekend and try to talk to her seriously. But don't expect miracles from this conversation, he warned. She won't listen to me anyway. At least try to explain to her that I'm not forever, and that parents should be respected. I'll try, Mom. I returned home in the evening tired but a little relieved. It's good to have Augusto, reliable, responsible. I can rely on him. It's just a pity that Estrella has grown up differently. The next day was Thursday, the day of my scheduled appointment with Dr. Santana. I got up early, had breakfast, and by 9 a.m. I was at the clinic. The clinic was in an old building in the center of town. The corridors were narrow and the paint on the walls was peeling, but the doctors were good. Dr. Santana was in room number 7 on the second floor. There were 5 elderly people in line and 1 young woman with a child. I got in line and waited. I didn't have my reading, so I just watched people and thought about my own thoughts. An elderly man next to me was complaining to his wife about back pain. The woman nodded and advised him to work less in the vegetable garden. A young mother was trying to soothe a coughing baby. The hallway smelled of medicine and disinfection. Dr. Santana saw me at 11:30. He was a man of about 55, with graying hair and kind eyes behind glasses. He had been treating our family for years and knew all our ailments and peculiarities. How are you feeling, Dolores? He asked, looking at my chart. Not so good. My blood pressure's skyrocketing. My heartbeat's a little irregular. I had a headache last night. Did you take your blood pressure at home? No, I don't have a blood pressure monitor. The doctor took my blood pressure. It was 170/110. That's high. Dolores, I didn't put you on medication for nothing. You see how high your blood pressure is? It's dangerous. You could have a stroke or a heart attack. He took out a prescription pad and began to write down the names of the drugs, explaining when and how to take them. This one is for blood pressure. Take 1 tablet in the morning on an empty stomach. This is for the heart, 3 times a day after meals. And these vitamins, once a day, preferably at breakfast. Doctor, isn't there anything you can do without medication? Maybe some kind of diet or some kind of folk remedy? Dolores, I realize medication is expensive, But your condition is serious. Diet and folk remedies won't help. You need serious therapy. He explained to me that if left untreated in a year or two, irreversible changes in the heart and blood vessels can begin. And then it's not far to trouble. How long do you need to take these drugs? The first 3 months, a full course, then I will see how you feel. Perhaps the dosage can be reduced but never completely canceled. You mean for the rest of your life? Most likely, yes, but you'll feel good and you'll live a long time. The doctor gave me a list of medicines with exact names and dosages. Some of the drugs were imported, expensive. One bottle cost almost as much as my weekly pension. Where's the best place to buy them? At the pharmacy next to the polyclinic, or is there somewhere cheaper? Try different pharmacies. The prices are different everywhere. Sometimes there are cheaper analogs, but they need to be coordinated with me. After the appointment, I went to the pharmacy next to the polyclinic to find out the prices. The pharmacist, a full middle-aged woman in a white coat, carefully studied my prescription. Everything is in stock. Let me calculate how much it will cost. She started adding up the prices on a calculator. I stood next to her and tried to peek at the screen. So for a month of treatment, you'll have 2,400, she finally announced. Almost my full pension. And the course of treatment, 6 months at least. Are there any cheaper analogs? There are, but not for all drugs, and the effectiveness may be lower. I've decided not to buy anything yet, but first to go around a few more pharmacies. Maybe I'll find somewhere cheaper. At the other 2 pharmacies, the prices were about the same. In one, a 1-month course cost 2,200, in the other, 2,500. A penny's worth of savings. On the way home, I thought about having to spend my savings. It was a pity to part with money that had been saved for years, but there was no choice. Health really is the most expensive thing. At home, I sat down at the kitchen table and calculated the costs on a piece of paper. If I bought medicines for 6 months in advance, it would be almost 15,000. It was a lot of money, but there was a little more in the safe, enough for the treatment and something left over for emergencies. In the evening, I went to Amelia's again. I wanted to share my worries with someone and get some advice. So, did you go to the doctor? She asked, sitting me down at the table. I did. He confirmed that it is necessary to be treated. He prescribed a lot of drugs. What did the son say about Estrella? He said he'd talk to her, but he doesn't hold out much hope. He says she doesn't listen to him. Do you think talking to her would help? I don't know. Estrella's always been stubborn. Once she's made up her mind, it's almost impossible to change her mind. We sat at Amelia's until late in the evening, discussing our problems and worries. My friend told me about her ailments, I told her about mine. That's how we live, pensioners, supporting each other. Before going to bed, I counted the money in the safe once again. Enough for treatment. Tomorrow I'll go to the pharmacy and buy medicine at least for the first month. I'll start taking it and see how I feel. The next day I got up early, around 7 in the morning as usual. Outside the window, it was drizzling with fine rain, typical of our region at this time of year. Gray clouds covered the sky, and the air was damp and heavy. I made coffee, had breakfast of oatmeal with fruit, and decided to go to the central pharmacy, which was recommended to me by an acquaintance from the polyclinic. She said that the prices there were lower than in other places, and there was more choice. I dressed carefully. I took an umbrella, wore comfortable low-heeled shoes and a light jacket. I put my money in my purse, which I carried over my shoulder. I left my documents at home. I didn't need them at the pharmacy. The bus took a long time because of traffic jams. There was always a bustle in the center. The market, stores, banks, everyone went there on business. The rain intensified and the driver drove carefully. I sat at the window and looked at the drenched streets, at the people with umbrellas, at the store windows. The city lived its usual life, and my mind was spinning with thoughts about the upcoming expenses for treatment. I reached the pharmacy only by 11 in the morning. It was a large, modern pharmacy in a shopping center with wide aisles and many shop windows. The pharmacist was a young guy of about 25, in a white coat and with a name tag on his chest. He scrutinized my prescription and offered several options. You can take the original drugs, as prescribed by the doctor, he explained, showing me the packages. Or you can take analogs. They work the same way, but they are produced by other companies and cost less. I chose a compromise option. Some of the original drugs, some analogs. The pharmacist patiently explained the difference between the drugs, showed me the instructions, told me about the side effects. It was 400 reals cheaper than in other pharmacies. I bought a month's worth of medication, deciding not to spend a large sum at once. After the pharmacy, I went to the supermarket to buy groceries. I needed to buy meat, vegetables, cereals, dairy products. In the meat department, I chose cheaper chicken. In the vegetable department, tomatoes and cucumbers, not the first freshness, but at a reduced price. Each reel was important, considering the upcoming expenses for treatment. I stood in line for a long time. The cash register worked slowly. There were a lot of customers. In front of me stood a young mom with a cart full of baby food and toys. Behind me was an elderly man with a basket containing only bread, milk, and canned goods. Everyone was buying something of their own, living with their own worries. I reached home only at 2:30 in the afternoon. The rain had almost stopped, but the asphalt still glistened with moisture. I walked along the familiar path to my house, thinking that in the evening I would have to start taking my medication. The doctor had said that the first results would be noticeable in a week or two. As I approached the house, I noticed that the front door was ajar. My heart jumped. I always locked the house carefully, checking the lock several times. It was a habit developed from years of living alone. Maybe I'd forgotten in the morning. But no, I remembered turning the key and pulling the knob, making sure the door was locked. I gently pushed the door open and stepped into the house. The hallway was a mess. The shoe basket was overturned, my slippers were on the floor, and my umbrella, which usually stood in the corner, was lying on the floor. The rug by the door was crumpled and pushed to the side. In the living room, the picture was even worse. The couch cushions were strewn across the floor, the desk drawers pulled out, the contents scattered. Books from the shelf were lying on the couch. Magazines were lying on the floor. Someone had obviously been looking for something and hadn't taken much care to hide the signs of a search. My legs gave out, and I crouched on the edge of the couch. Robbery. That was all I needed. It was rare in our neighborhood, but lately crime had reached the quiet suburbs. Neighbors told me that several houses on the next block had been burglarized in the last month. I went into the kitchen, and it was a mess too. Drawers pulled out, cans and boxes rearranged. The refrigerator was open, even though I remembered closing it in the morning. There were pot lids lying on the floor. Then I went into the bedroom, and here my heart dropped completely. The painting on the wall was crooked, and behind it was a black hole. The safe had been opened. It had been opened roughly, apparently with a crowbar or some other tool. The metal edges were bent, the lock broken, the door dangling on one hinge. Inside the safe was empty, completely empty. Gone were all my savings, 18,000 reals that I had collected over the years. The very money that was supposed to be used for medical treatment. Gone was my late husband's gold jewelry, his wedding ring, the cross chain I kept as a keepsake, and my own earrings from my mother. I sank down on the bed and cried. For the first time in years, the tears flowed on their own and I couldn't stop them. Everything was gone. The money for treatment, the documents, the memory of my husband and parents. Who could have done this? How did they know about the safe? Why now, when I needed the money so badly? For 10 minutes, I just sat there crying. Then I pulled myself together. I had to call the police, find out who was responsible. But first, I wanted to understand what had happened. Who could have known about the existence of the safe? I walked around the house, checking to see what else was missing. The TV was still there. The refrigerator was still there. The microwave was still there. Even the gold earrings that were on the dressing table in plain sight were still intact. The thieves knew exactly what they were looking for, the safe and its contents. It was very strange. Ordinary burglars would have taken a TV, a microwave, anything that could be sold quickly. But here they purposefully opened the safe and took only the contents. It was as if someone knew exactly what was in there, where to look. I sat in the kitchen and tried to remember who I could have told about the safe. No one, not even the kids. I hadn't told them where I kept the money. Amelia knew I had savings, but she didn't know where it was. Maybe the burglars accidentally stumbled upon the safe while searching the house. But then why didn't they take anything else? Why didn't they touch the appliances, the jewelry that lay in plain sight? No, they knew what they were looking for. I walked out into the yard and saw Amelia watering the flowers outside her house. My friend immediately noticed my upset state and dropped the watering can. Dolores, what's wrong? You're as pale as a sheet. She ran up to me. I was robbed, I said, my voice trembling. They opened the safe and stole all the money. How did it happen? When did it happen? I don't know. I went to the drugstore downtown this morning, and when I came back, the house was trashed and the safe was empty. Oh my God! Did you call the police? Not yet. I wanted to find out what was missing first. How much money was there? All my savings. 18,000. The same money I'd been saving for treatment. Amelia gasped and hugged me. No way. Who would know about the money? That's what I'm thinking. I never told anyone about the safe. Did you see any suspicious people? Maybe the neighbors saw something? I didn't see anyone. Did you notice anything strange? Maybe strangers walking around the yard? Amelia thought for a moment, frowned, then suddenly perked up. You know, this morning, about 10 o'clock, I saw your daughter walking to your house with that guy. What's his name? Benicio. I thought she was visiting you. Estrella was here? Yes, she was. I was hanging laundry in the yard and I saw them come up to your gate. Then they went inside. How long were they there? About 30, maybe 40 minutes. Then they came out and walked towards the bus stop. The guy had some kind of big gym bag. The world turned upside down. Estrella, my own daughter. But she couldn't have known about the safe. Or could she? Amelia, are you sure it was them? I'm absolutely sure. I recognize Estrella from a mile away, and I just saw the guy at your place the day before yesterday. Tall, thin, messy hair, jeans with holes in them. What were they doing? How were they acting? The usual, talking about something, laughing. Estrella was her usual loud self, gesticulating with her hands. I didn't notice anything suspicious. I figured she just came by to talk to you or pick something up. How did they open the door? I don't know, I wasn't watching. But when they came out, I noticed they'd closed the door. I got dizzy. My own daughter stole from me, stole the money that was meant for my treatment. How could she do that? How did she know about the safe? Dolores, maybe it was an accident. Amelia tried to comfort me. Maybe someone else did it and they were just visiting. Maybe you have a spare key and she used it. The spare key is under the flower pot by the door. Estrella knows that. But how do you explain that the thieves knew about the safe? And why didn't they take anything else? Amelia was silent. The answer was obvious, though we both didn't want to believe it. Or maybe she was looking for something else. Documents, for example? What documents? I don't keep any secrets from my children. I don't know, Dolores. It's all very strange. What are you going to do now? I'm going to call her, find out what's going on, and then I'll decide whether to go to the police. We went back to my house. Amelia helped clean up the living room, gathering books, putting back cushions, putting things back in the desk drawers. Meanwhile, I was trying to figure out exactly what had happened that morning in my absence. Do you remember what they were wearing? I asked my friend. Estrella was wearing the same pink dress as the day before yesterday, and the guy in a dark t-shirt and jeans, and he had a backpack on his shoulders. A backpack and a duffel bag? Yeah, both. The backpack was small and the duffel bag was a gym bag, big, enough room to carry jewelry and papers, and the money won't take up much room at all. I dialed Estrella's number. The phone didn't answer for a long time. Then there were long beeps. Finally, it clicked. Hello, Mom? The daughter's voice sounded cheerful, carefree. The sound of waves, seagulls, and music could be heard in the background. Estrella, where are you? At the beach with Benicio. We decided to go to the ocean for a couple of days. The weather's great, the water's warm. Such a beautiful sunset. What money did you use to go there? What's the difference? You sounded a little wary. We found some money and decided to take a vacation. Life is short, so we should seize the moment. Where did you find the money? At Benicio's house. He sold a painting to a local collector. Estrella, I was robbed this morning. They opened the safe, stole all my savings. Silence. Then nervous laughter. Mom, what does this have to do with me? Maybe the neighbors robbed you or something. It's not uncommon these days. A neighbor saw you come into my house this morning with Benicio. Another pause, longer. So? We came to say goodbye before our trip. We wanted to tell you we were leaving. How did you know I wasn't home? We knocked, nobody answered. We thought she'd gone to the store or to the doctor. We decided to wait a while. How did you get in the house? We found the key under the potty. I thought you said there was a spare key under there. Estrella, tell the truth. Did you take the money from the safe? Mom, are you crazy? What safe? I didn't even know you had a safe. Where is it anyway? But her voice was shaking, and I knew my daughter was lying. Too many coincidences. Estrella, give me the money back. I need it for my treatment. Without it, I can't buy medicine. Mom, I don't know what you're talking about. Benicio and I took the money from his house, from the sale of the painting. It has nothing to do with your robbery. How much money? I don't remember exactly. A few thousand. Benicio says the buyer paid cash and left the money at his house. A few thousand. Exactly as much as was in my safe. Estrella, listen to me carefully. I need this money to buy medicine. The doctor said that without treatment, I could have a stroke or a heart attack. Mom, don't be so dramatic. You've always been as healthy as a horse. The doctor's probably just trying to make money off you. I've already bought the medicine, started taking it. It's a serious treatment. Well, keep taking it. You can find more money or borrow some. Borrow money from who? Augusto? He doesn't have much money himself. I don't know, that's your problem. Maybe you could sell one of your apartments. You have several. Estrella, do you realize what you're saying? These apartments are my only income. Without them, I'd have nothing to live on. I understand. What am I supposed to do? I can't help you. Yes, you can. Give back the money you stole. I didn't steal anything. My voice has become harsh. Stop accusing me of all my sins. Estrella, I'm your mother. I gave birth to you, raised you, took care of you all my life. Can't you help me in my time of need? Look, Mom, I can't talk right now. We're going on a trip to the falls. It's a long drive. We have to leave. Estrella, wait. No, Mom. Your treatment is not my problem. Bye. Long beeps. Estrella dropped the call. I stood with the phone in my hand and couldn't believe what I was hearing. Your treatment is not my problem. Those were the words of my own daughter. The one I carried under my heart, birthed in agony, breastfed, raised, clothed, taught, and worried about every day for 32 years. Amelia came over and put her arm around my shoulders. What did she say? Denies everything. She says they got the money from the sale of Benicio's painting. Do you believe her? No, she's lying. Too many coincidences. And you know what she said at the end? Your treatment is not my problem. Amelia shook her head. I can't believe it. Her own daughter. How could she? I can. Remember how she reacted when I told her about the disease? Total indifference. And this Benicio must have put her up to it. What are you going to do now? I don't know. I can't get treatment without money. I don't want to sell my apartment. It's my only source of income. It's impossible to live on a pension. We sat in the kitchen, drinking tea and trying to think of a way out of the situation. Amelia suggested going to the police, but I had my doubts. It would be difficult to prove that my daughter had stolen the money. And did I really want to put my own child in jail? Why don't you borrow money from the bank? They won't give me a loan at my age. And how can I pay it back? My pension is barely enough to live on. And then there's the interest. Then go to the police after all. Let them investigate. Maybe they'll find the culprits. I'm afraid we won't be able to prove anything. Estrella will deny it, Benicio too, and there are no witnesses. I do. I saw them enter your house with the bags. That's not enough. They'll say they came to say goodbye. They'll say they didn't know about the safe. Why don't we ask Augusto to talk to his sister? We could try that. But he said himself that she doesn't listen to him. In the evening, Amelia went home and I was left alone with my thoughts. The house felt alien after the invasion. Every sound made me shudder. I checked all the locks, pushed the heavy dresser against the bedroom door, even though I knew it wouldn't help if someone really wanted to get in. I didn't feel like eating dinner, and I didn't have an appetite. I sat back in my chair and tried to figure out what to do next. Should I call Augusto and tell him everything? Go to the police? Try to contact Estrella again? Most of all, the thought that my daughter might have stolen from me plagued me. Had I raised her so badly? Where was my mistake? Maybe I spoiled her too much, didn't teach her to be responsible? Or is it a character that can't be changed? I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed and thought about what to do now. The money was gone, there was nothing to cure, and the disease didn't wait. The doctor warned that without medication, the condition would worsen, and irreversible changes in the body could begin. The worst thing was not the lack of money, but the betrayal of the daughter. How could she steal the money intended for treatment from her own mother? How could she say that my health was not her problem? Around midnight, I got up and walked to the bedroom. I looked at the empty safe, the broken lock, the bent metal edges. All the years of saving, all my hopes for a peaceful old age gone in one morning. And Estrella did it. My own daughter, who said my treatment wasn't her problem. The same daughter for whom I had worked and saved all my life. I woke up this morning with a headache and a heavy feeling in my chest. I had nightmares all night. Estrella laughing at me looking for money in an empty safe, the doctor telling me that without treatment I had a few months to live. I got up shattered, barely forcing myself to eat breakfast. Around 10 in the morning, I decided to go to Augusto's. I couldn't keep quiet any longer. I had to tell my son what had happened. Maybe he could influence my sister to return the money. The bus was going slowly. Many stops. I sat by the window and thought about how to tell my son about the theft. Would he believe that Estrella had done it? Or would he think I suspected my daughter without reason? Augusto greeted me with surprise. I rarely came to see him 2 days in a row. Mom, what's wrong? You look terrible. Can I come in? We need to talk. Patricia was just mopping the hallway. When she saw me, she put down the mop and offered me tea. We sat down in the kitchen and I began to tell her about yesterday. I was robbed, I said without preamble. Augusto flinched. Patricia gasped. How did it happen? You weren't hurt? No, I wasn't home. I came home and the house was trashed and the safe had been opened. What safe? My son was surprised. I had a small safe in my bedroom behind a painting. That's where I kept my savings. Mom, why didn't you ever tell me about it? I didn't want the children to know where the money was. You never know. Augusto frowned. How much was stolen? All of it, 18,000 reals. The very money I'd been saving for my treatment. Oh my God, Patricia whispered. Did you call the police? Not yet. I wanted to talk to you first. Why? Augusto didn't understand. I took a deep breath. The hardest part was ahead. Because I know who did it. Who? Your sister. Augusto and Patricia looked at each other. The son shook his head. Mom, that's a serious accusation. Are you sure? Amelia saw Estrella and Benicio come into my house this morning. They had bags. And when I called my daughter, she said she found money from Benicio and went on vacation with it. Maybe it really is his money. Augusto, there are too many coincidences. They come into my house, rob it an hour later, then go on vacation with the money they found. The son was silent, pondering what he had heard. Patricia was nervously rubbing her napkin. What did she say when you asked her directly? She denied everything. Says the money is from the sale of Benicio's painting. And what else? I recounted the whole conversation with Estrella, including her last sentence. Augusto listened in silence, but his face darkened with every word. Your treatment is not my problem, he interjected. That's exactly what she said. Augusto got up from the table and paced the kitchen. Patricia sat with downcast eyes. Mom, I always knew there was something wrong with Estrella, but to steal her own mother's money for treatment. She's changed, son. She's become cruel, selfish. Or she always was. We just didn't want to see it. Augusto sat back down and took my hand. Mom, what are you going to do now? I don't know. I can't get treatment without money. And I'm afraid to sell the apartments. I'll have no income. I'll give you what I can, but we don't have much left. Thank you, darling, but it's not enough. Treatment is expensive. It takes a long time. We sat in the kitchen for another hour discussing the situation. Augusto suggested we go to Estrella and demand an explanation, but she was somewhere on the coast. Patricia advised going to the police, but there wasn't much evidence. Do you know what I think? Augusto finally said, We have to take drastic measures. What kind of measures? A will. You bequeathed everything to us equally, didn't you? Yes, well, I don't think Estrella should get anything after what she's done. It took me a while to realize what he was getting at. Are you suggesting that she should be disinherited? Exactly. Let her know that she should be held accountable for this kind of thing. The idea seemed right to me. Estrella thought she could steal from her mother with impunity, counting on a future inheritance. It's time to show her that such behavior has consequences. How do we do that? You have to go to a notary, rewrite the will. I'll help you. The next day, Augusto and I went to the notary's office. It was in an old building in the center of town on the second floor. The notary, a full-figured woman in her 50s, received us in an office filled with folders and documents. "What can I do for you?" she asked, studying my passport. "I want to change my will." "You already have a will?" "Yes, I made it 3 years ago. Your predecessors." The notary found my file in the archives. The previous will divided the property equally between the children. 2 apartments for Augusto, 2 for Estrella. "What do you want to change?" "I want to bequeath everything to my son. The daughter is to be disinherited completely." "I see. What's the reason?" "I told the notary about the theft, about my daughter's indifference to my health." The woman listened attentively, nodding occasionally. "Technically, you have the right to dispose of your property as you wish," she said at last. "But I must warn you, my daughter can challenge the will in court." "On what grounds?" "She could claim that you were insane or that you were pressured." Augusto intervened in the conversation. "And how to avoid that?" "It's advisable to have a psychiatrist's certificate that the testator is sane, and witnesses who will confirm that the decision was made consciously." "And if she tries to contest it?" "The court will look into it. But if there are good reasons for disinheritance, the will be upheld." We decided to take action. The notary drew up a new will, according to which all 4 apartments went to Augusto. The document stated the reason for disinheritance: due to disrespectful attitude towards the testator and committing unlawful acts. "You'll have to sign it in front of 2 witnesses," the notary explained, "and pay the state duty." The witnesses were 2 employees of the office. I signed, feeling that I was taking an important step. Estrella could no longer count on my estate after her death. After the notary, Augusto and I drove to the police station. The station inspector, a man in his 40s in a crumpled uniform, listened to my story of the theft. "So you suspect the daughter?" he said, taking down my statement. "Yes. There is a witness who saw her enter the house with the bags." "What does the daughter say?" "She denies it, claims the money was from the sale of her boyfriend's painting." "Oh, I see. Where is she now?" "Somewhere on the coast, vacationing with the money she stole." The cop wrote down all the details: time of the theft, amount of damage, Amelia's statement. Then he explained the next steps. "We'll open a criminal case. When the daughter returns, we'll call her in for questioning. If she doesn't confess, we'll look for other evidence." "And what evidence would that be?" "Fingerprints on the safe, signs of forced entry, witnesses. Maybe someone saw them leave with the bags. And if you can't find anything, then the case will be dismissed for lack of evidence. But let's try to find out." The policeman gave me a certificate of registration of the statement and said that within a week it would be decided to initiate criminal proceedings. I returned home tired, but with the feeling that at least I was doing something. The will has been rewritten. The application has been filed. Now Estrella will learn that you have to answer for your actions. In the evening, Amelia came by. I told her about the visit to the notary and the police. "You did the right thing," said her friend. "You can't let the children sit on your neck. I'm afraid that when Estrella finds out about the will, she'll make a scene. Let her, it's her own fault." "What if I'm wrong? What if she really didn't take the money?" "Dolores, there are too many coincidences. Don't torture yourself with doubts. We had tea, talked about this and that. Amelia told me that a policeman came to see her in the afternoon to write down her statement that she'd seen Estrella outside my house." "What did you tell him?" "The truth, that she saw your daughter and her boyfriend go in with bags and come out half an hour later." "And he what?" He wrote it down in detail, asked me if I was sure it was them. I said I was absolutely sure. After Amelia left, I sat in the kitchen for a long time, thinking about what had happened. My life had changed dramatically in 2 days. Savings stolen, a police report filed, a will rewritten, and it was all my own daughter's fault. The worst part wasn't the fact that I lost the money I needed for treatment. The worst part was realizing that Estrella was capable of such a despicable act, stealing her sick mother's last savings and telling her that her treatment was not her daughter's problem. Before going to bed, I took one of the pills I bought yesterday. It'll last a month, and then what? I'll have to borrow or sell the apartment. Or maybe the police will find evidence and make Estrella pay the money back. As I fell asleep, I thought about the fact that tomorrow a new life would begin. A life with no illusions about my daughter, no hope of fixing her. Estrella had made her choice, and now let her live with the consequences. The week passed in languid anticipation. Every day I thought about when Estrella would return from her vacation with the stolen money. The policeman called twice, clarified the details, said that a criminal case had been opened and was waiting for the suspect to return for questioning. I tried to lead an ordinary life, went to the store, cleaned the house, met with Amelia, but my thoughts kept returning to the upcoming conversation with my daughter. I took my medication faithfully, following Dr. Santana's exact instructions. A blood pressure pill in the morning on an empty stomach, vitamins after breakfast, a heart medication at lunch and in the evening. I felt a little better. Headaches became less frequent, blood pressure stabilized, heart worked more evenly. But the constant tension of thinking about Estrella was nullifying the effect of the treatment. On Monday, the district officer came to my house, once again examined the place of the theft, photographed the broken safe, made some notes in a notebook. He said that as soon as the suspects returned, they would be called in for questioning. I asked what would happen if they didn't confess. He replied that then they would look for additional evidence, check where they got the money from, interview witnesses, examine their phones and bank cards. On Wednesday night, I received a phone call from Amelia. She sounded worried. "Dolores, your daughter's back. I saw her and her boyfriend walking by the house about 20 minutes ago, both tan and happy, carrying some shopping bags." My heart was racing. It was payback time. I felt my mouth go dry. "Thanks for the warning. So we're not out of money yet." "Apparently not. What are you going to do?" "I'll call you tomorrow morning, ask you to come, and I'll ask Augusto to be a witness. I want someone else to hear our conversation." "That's right. Otherwise, he'll say you said something wrong." I didn't sleep well all night, tossing and turning, thinking about the conversation. How to start, what to say, how to explain to my daughter that her actions have serious consequences. I got up several times, walked around the house, drank water, lay down again. The next day I got up early, around 6 in the morning. I made a strong coffee, ate breakfast, cleaned up. I wanted to look organized and confident. At about 10 in the morning, I dialed Estrella's number. Long beeps, then her daughter's sleepy, disgruntled voice. "Hello, Mom. Why are you calling so early? We just got here yesterday. We want to get some sleep." "Estrella, are you home?" "Of course I'm home. Where else would I be this early? I'm not really awake yet." "I need to have a serious talk with you. Come to my place tonight." "Talk about what?" I sounded a little wary. "Why do I have to go anywhere? Why don't you come to my place?" "No, we'll talk at my house. It's very important. It's about our family." "Mom, I can't tonight. Benicio and I have plans all day. We want to go to the movies, then to his friend's house. Let's do it tomorrow or the day after." "Estrella, I'm not asking. I'm demanding. Come at 3 o'clock this afternoon and come with Benicio." "Why him? What does he have to do with our family affairs?" "You'll find out when you get there. I'll meet you at 3 o'clock. Okay, I'll be there. But I want this to be important, not another one of your nagging questions." After talking to my daughter, I called Augusto at work. I explained the situation and asked him to come and witness the conversation. "Son, Estrella is coming this afternoon. I want to tell her about the will and the police report. Please be there to support me." "Sure, Mom. What time do you have to be there?" "She'll be here at 3, but you come early, 3:30. I want to talk to you again about the best way to say it." "All right, I'll take a day off work. I'll say it's a family emergency." "Thank you, darling. I couldn't have done it without you." Before my son arrived, I put the house in perfect order, prepared tea and cookies, although I doubted that the conversation would be peaceful. I changed into a strict dark dress. I wanted to look solid and serious. Augusto arrived at 2:45. He looked worried but determined. We sat down in the kitchen and I told him again the plan of the conversation. The main thing is not to give in to provocation, my son advised. Estrella will definitely shout, accuse you of everything, maybe even start crying. Don't react emotionally, speak only facts. I'll try to stay calm, but you know, son, this is so hard for me. I never thought I'd have to report my own daughter to the police. Mom, it's not your fault. Estrella chose this path on her own. Now let her take responsibility for her actions. What if I'm wrong? What if the money really came from the sale of this Benicio's painting? There are too many coincidences. Besides, if they were innocent, why lie? They could have just shown the deed of sale. At exactly 3 o'clock, voices and laughter were heard in the yard. Estrella went to the house, accompanied by Benicio. They were talking cheerfully about something. I looked out of the window, both tanned, in summer clothes, with satisfied faces. The daughter was wearing a new bright yellow dress, which obviously cost a lot of money, and the boy was wearing a snow-white shirt and fashionable sunglasses. It was obvious that they'd had a great vacation and spent a lot of money on themselves. I opened the door before they knocked. Estrella burst into the house with a big smile. Benicio followed her, looking slightly embarrassed. "Hi, Mom. How are you?" exclaimed her daughter cheerfully, kissing me on the cheek. "You can't imagine what an amazing vacation we had. Such beautiful places, such a clean sea." "Hello, Mrs. Neves." Benicio politely said hello. "Thank you for letting me come." "Come in, sit down," I said dryly. Estrella went into the living room and suddenly stopped when she saw Augusto in the kitchen. "What's your brother doing here? I thought we were going to talk alone. Why did you call him?" "I asked him to come. It's about the whole family." "What family?" I sounded suspicious. "Mom, you're scaring me. What are you talking about?" "Sit down and find out." Estrella reluctantly sank down on the sofa. Benicio settled down beside her, putting his hand on her shoulder. Augusto came out of the kitchen and stood behind my chair. I sat down across from my daughter, trying to remain calm. "So tell me about your vacation." I began as neutrally as possible. "Where were you? What did you see?" "Oh, Mom, it was just fabulous!" Estrella revived. "We lived in a hotel right on the ocean. Every morning we woke up to the sound of waves. We went on excursions to waterfalls, visited old towns, tasted the local cuisine. Benicio took so many photos for future paintings. Shall I show you?" "No need. Tell me how you paid for all this. Hotels, tours, restaurants. It's not cheap." "Mom, we already talked about this on the phone. With the money from the sale of Benicio's painting, he found a buyer who paid a good price." "And how much did this mystery buyer pay?" "Well, enough for a week's vacation." Estrella looked at Benicio as if looking for support. "Estrella, stop lying to my eyes." "Mom, what makes you think I'm lying? I'm your daughter. Why would I lie to you?" "Because I know the truth. You stole money from my safe." There was a heavy silence. Estrella turned pale. Benicio began to nervously rub the edge of his shirt. Augusto silently watched their reactions. "Mom, what are you talking about?" "What safe? I didn't even know you had a safe." Her daughter tried to object, but her voice trembled. "You didn't know? Then how do you explain that on the day of the theft, a neighbor saw you and Benicio enter my house with large bags, and half an hour later came out? We came to say goodbye before we left. We wanted to say we were leaving for a few days. And you needed bags for that? We had stuff for the trip. We went straight from there to the bus station. Estrella, I had 18,000 reals in my safe. Exactly the same amount you spent on your vacation. That can't be a coincidence." "Yes, it can. Benicio sold the painting for that exact amount." I turned to Benicio, who was still silent. "What do you say? Show me the deed of sale, or at least give me the name of the buyer." The guy hesitated, avoiding my gaze. "You see, it was a private collector. He didn't want publicity. Asked me not to give his name." "And the deed of sale?" "We made a verbal agreement. He paid cash." "How convenient. And there were no witnesses, of course?" "No, we met face to face." "Estrella," I said to my daughter, "stop making up stories. I know you stole my money. I have proof." What proof? The daughter jumped up from the couch. A witness who saw you open the safe, a broken lock with your fingerprints on it, and most importantly, I filed a police report against you. What did you say? Estrella whispered, her face white as chalk. I filed a theft report with the police. The police officer has already opened a criminal case. You'll be called in for questioning in the next few days. Are you out of your mind? The daughter screamed. How could you report your own child to the police? I'm your daughter. You stopped being my daughter when you stole the last of your sick mother's money for treatment. Benicio quietly got up from the couch and headed for the exit. Where are you going? Estrella shouted at him. I have to go, he mumbled without turning around. I have important business. I can't be late. What kind of business? We agreed to spend the evening together. I'm sorry, Estrella, but I can't stay. This whole thing, it's too serious for me. Wait, don't leave me alone. But Benicio was already on his way to the door, evidently anxious to get away from this unpleasant conversation. Don't go, Estrella shouted. But the front door had already slammed. There goes your prince, said Augusto. As soon as he talked about the police, he remembered important business. Shut up, Estrella snapped at him. He just doesn't want to get involved in our family disputes. Or he's afraid he'll be implicated as an accomplice, added his brother. Mother, withdraw that statement at once. My daughter turned to me. You have no right to ruin my life. I am not ruining your life. You ruined it yourself when you decided to steal from your mother. How many times do I have to tell you I didn't steal anything? Benicio had the money from the sale of the painting. Then what's the problem? Tell it to the investigator, show the evidence, and they'll let you go. What proof? Benicio said the buyer wanted to remain anonymous. So there's no proof. What I have is a witness statement, a broken safe, missing money, and your sudden wealth. Estrella started pacing around the room, waving her arms and muttering something to herself. Then she stopped and stared at me. What else do you have in mind? I'm sure it's not all of your surprises. Indeed, not all of them. I took a deep breath. I've changed my will. What? My daughter froze like a statue. I had the will rewritten by a notary. When I die, all my property will go to Augusto alone. You have no right, Estrella shrieked so loudly that probably heard the neighbors. I am your daughter. I have a legal right to inherit. I have every right to dispose of my property as I please. It's written in the law. But why? Why are you punishing me like this? For stealing, for disrespecting my mother, for saying that my treatment is not your problem. That's not what I meant. I was upset. I spoke out of turn. Estrella, you're 32 years old. At your age, people take responsibility for what they say. But apartments are all I'll have in the future. How will I live when I'm old? How will I live without treatment? Did you think about that when you stole my money? I didn't steal it. My daughter sobbed. Why don't you all listen to me? Because you're lying. And you're doing it badly. Estrella collapsed on the sofa and burst into tears. But the tears were more from anger and despair than remorse. She cried like a child who had been caught stealing and punished. You have ruined my whole life, she sobbed. I always knew you didn't love me. I always preferred Augusto. Don't be silly. I raised you the same way. It's just that Augusto grew up to be a decent man and you didn't. That's not true. You were always harder on me. You always demanded more. Maybe I should have demanded more. Then you wouldn't have grown up to be a thief. I'm not a thief, Estrella shouted, jumping up from the sofa. Stop calling me that. What else do you call a man who steals from his own mother? But you're not going to die without this treatment. Doctors always exaggerate to get more money. Estrella, I have serious heart and blood pressure problems. Without medication, I could have a stroke or a heart attack. So what? People get sick and get well, and you can only bequeath apartments once. I couldn't believe my ears. My daughter calmly talked about the fact that my health is less important than her future inheritance. So you think your inheritance is more important than my life? That's not what I said. You're twisting my words on purpose. I'm hearing exactly what you're saying, and I don't like what I'm hearing. Her daughter cried again, but now there was real panic in her tears. Mom, you can't do this. I'll make it up to you. I'll get the money back, find a job, be a good daughter. Where will you get $18,000? You don't have a job, and Benicio ran away. I'll find a way. I'll borrow from friends. I'll work day and night. Estrella, that would take years, and I need treatment now, every day. But there must be something you can do. Sell one apartment. Why would I sell an apartment if you stole the money? It just happened. I didn't do it on purpose. You didn't do it on purpose? Did the safe crack itself? Mom, I can explain everything. Benicio and I were in a difficult situation. We needed money for a trip. Finally, the truth. We wanted to pay it all back. Honestly. Without the owner's permission, it's called theft. But we were going to return it. Someday, maybe, if we could. Very solid plans. Estrella realized that she had finally lost. She got up from the couch and headed for the door, wiping her tears with the sleeve of her new dress. I won't let this go, she threatened in a trembling voice. I'll get a good lawyer, appeal the will in court, prove that you were insane when you signed it. Try me. I have a psychiatrist's certificate saying I'm fully competent, and witnesses who will testify that it was a conscious decision. Estrella reached the door and turned around. Her face was red with tears, her hair disheveled. I will never forgive you. You've robbed me of everything. My money, my inheritance, my future. You took it all away from yourself. I just summed it up. I hate you. And I hate him too. She pointed her finger in Augusto's direction. You're all conspiring against me. No one's conspiring against you. You chose this path on your own. I'll see you in court, Estrella shouted, and slammed the door so hard that the glass in the window shook. Through the window, I saw her walking quickly down the driveway, waving her arms and shouting something. Neighbors looked out of their windows, wondering what the noise was. Augusto came over and put his arm around my shoulders. Are you having a hard time, Mom? Very hard, but it's the right thing to do. I can't let my daughter rob me with impunity. She'll come back, apologize, and beg me to change my will. Maybe. But until she returns the money and apologizes sincerely, nothing will change. What if she does get a lawyer and sue? Let her sue. I have all the necessary documents and certificates. The court will take care of it. Don't you feel sorry for her? I do. But I can't let my own daughter sit on my neck. It's time she learns that actions have consequences. We sat in the kitchen for half an hour discussing what had happened. Augusto was worried that the family would fall apart, but I was adamant. Estrella must learn her lesson, even if it was painful for all of us. After my son left, I sat in the chair for a long time looking out the window. It was hard on my heart. After all, this was my daughter, no matter how badly she had done. But I knew I had done the right thing. Children should not be allowed to steal from their parents with impunity, especially the sick and elderly.